James stood outside the towering office building, his fingers clenched tightly around his phone. Betrayed. That was the only word that seemed to fit the emotions churning inside him. His uncle had promised him a future, a chance to start fresh. But now he had nothing. No money, no deal, no future. As he stood there, staring at the ground, he realized how much he had believed in the idea that everything would work out. He had been naive. Chief Thomas hadn't just betrayed him, he had played him like a pawn in his own twisted game. For a long moment, James considered his options. The city buzzed around him, life moving on, indifferent to his pain. He could go back to the store, swallow his pride, and beg his uncle for some kind of settlement. But deep down, James knew that would never happen. His uncle had shown him who he really was. So what now? He took a deep breath and checked his phone again. There was a message from Olivia. Olivia. The name brought a smile to his face. They hadn't spoken much since university, but they had shared so many moments, study sessions, late-night talks, and even a couple of awkward dates that never turned into anything. Despite that, she had always been a bright spot in his life. Hey, James. Long time no speak. I heard you're back in Lagos. Let's meet for lunch soon. It's been forever. James didn't even hesitate. Lunch. Maybe this would be the break he needed. With a sense of determination, he typed a quick reply. Olivia, you have no idea how much I need this right now. Let's meet. I'll be free anytime today. She responded almost immediately. Perfect. How about the Blue Lagoon, 1 p.m.? I'll be waiting. The Blue Lagoon, a posh upscale restaurant by the waterfront. James chuckled at the choice. It was a far cry from his usual budget, but today he figured, why not? At 12:45 p.m., James arrived at the restaurant, his nerves still on edge. As he walked through the doors, the smell of fresh seafood and baked bread filled the air, mixing with the sounds of clinking glasses and soft music. The place was packed as usual, with well-dressed professionals and couples enjoying their midday meals. He scanned the room and spotted Olivia sitting by the window, looking as effortlessly beautiful as always. How was it that she managed to look so composed, even after all these years? She waved at him when she noticed him. James walked over with a nervous smile. As he approached, he noticed that she was no longer the young girl he remembered. She had matured both in appearance and in demeanor. But one thing hadn't changed, her easy smile. James. Wow, look at you, she said, standing up to give him a warm hug. James hugged her back, chuckling. I've missed you, Liv. You're still as beautiful as ever. I'm not sure I can say the same about myself. Olivia grinned, motioning for him to sit. Oh, stop it. You're the same James I used to know, just with a bit more edge now. Life treating you well? James sat down, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. This was exactly what he needed. A familiar face, someone who didn't judge him for his failures. But as soon as he sat down, the weight of his situation hit him again. He wasn't just struggling, he was drowning. He shook his head, a forced laugh escaping his lips. Well, it's funny you should ask. Life's been interesting. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Interesting, huh? That's one way to put it. James laughed a little more genuinely this time. You could say that. Let's just say I'm no longer working for my uncle and things aren't exactly going according to plan. Olivia's face softened with concern. Wait, you're not working for Chief Thomas anymore? What happened? James looked down at his hands, trying to collect his thoughts. He wanted to tell her everything. The betrayal, the broken promises, the shattered dreams. But he didn't want to come off like a broken record. He had no choice but to be honest, though. I thought he was going to help me out. 7 years, he said. Serve him. And then he'd settle me with enough money to start my own business. But in the end, he pulled the rug out from under me. Took back everything he promised, And now I'm left with nothing. Not even the 30 million naira he promised. Olivia looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. James could see the sympathy in her eyes, but he also noticed something else, something that gave him a sliver of hope. She wasn't pitying him. No, she was thinking. Finally, she broke the silence. James, you've been through a lot. But you know what? I think this might be the best thing that ever happened to you. He blinked, surprised. What do you mean? Olivia smiled, a glimmer of excitement in her eyes. I mean, you've been given a chance to reset. Start fresh. You're too talented to be stuck in a toxic situation. You've got all the skills, all the brains. Don't waste it on someone who doesn't appreciate you. James stared at her, her words sinking in. Was she right? Could this actually be the turning point? Before he could respond, the waiter arrived with their menus, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics, old university days, mutual friends, and even a funny story about a group assignment gone wrong. They laughed and caught up on the small things, but in the back of James's mind, Olivia's words echoed. When the waiter returned to take their orders, Olivia surprised him. James, you're looking for a fresh start, right? She asked casually, as if they were talking about the weather. Well, my dad's company is looking for a new manager. I could put in a good word for you. It's an oil company, pretty established. Good pay, great benefits, and a lot of room for growth. You'd be a perfect fit. James's eyes widened in disbelief. Wait, what? Your dad's company? Olivia nodded. Yeah, why not? You've got the credentials, the skills. All you need is the opportunity, and I can help you with that. For a moment, James just stared at her. Olivia, are you serious? You'd really do that for me? She grinned, her expression light but sincere. Of course, you're my friend. Besides, you deserve better than what your uncle has given you. Let me help you get there. The rest of the lunch passed in a blur. James felt like he had just been given the chance he needed, but there was still a part of him that hesitated. Was he ready for this? Was he ready to leave everything behind? But looking at Olivia, the hope in her eyes, he knew one thing for sure. This was his shot. As they finished their meal and walked out of the restaurant, Olivia's words echoed in his mind, and for the first time in a long while, James felt like he had a direction, like he was on the verge of something bigger than himself. He just had to take the first step. The drive to Olivia's father's office felt surreal. It wasn't just the sleek black car that James found himself sitting in, though that definitely added to the surrealism. It wasn't just the fact that he was on his way to an oil company, something so far removed from the world of electronics and betrayal he'd been stuck in for years. It was the way Olivia's words kept echoing in his mind. This is your fresh start, James. Don't mess it up. He stared out of the window, watching the Lagos skyline pass by. The roads were as chaotic as always, with motorbikes weaving between cars and pedestrians strolling down the street like they owned it. But James wasn't paying attention to the chaos anymore. His thoughts were elsewhere. His phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him from his trance. He fished it out quickly, his heart racing. It was a message from Olivia. Don't be nervous. You've got this. I'll be with you the whole way through. James smiled to himself. Her confidence was infectious. It was just what he needed to hear. A fresh start. The words felt foreign to him, like a dream he didn't think was possible. After everything that had happened, after being tossed aside by his uncle, could this really be the beginning of something better? He shook his head, trying to focus. He didn't have time to be lost in thought. He was about to walk into one of the biggest opportunities of his life, and he wasn't going to waste it. When the car pulled up to the company's headquarters, James's jaw dropped. It was nothing like he expected. The building was massive, towering over everything in its vicinity with sleek glass panels that shimmered in the sunlight. The parking lot was filled with expensive cars, and the entrance had a grand marble staircase that led up to the massive glass doors. The entire building screamed success, and here James was, walking in like he belonged. The driver opened the door for him, and James stepped out, adjusting his jacket. His heart was beating in his chest as he took in the grandeur of the place. This wasn't just any company. It was a powerhouse, and he was about to walk through those doors as if it was his destiny. Olivia was waiting by the entrance, looking as poised and graceful as always, dressed in a sharp business suit that probably cost more than James's entire wardrobe. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. "There he is, the man of the hour," she said with a smile, making James chuckle. "Are you ready?" James took a deep breath. "I'm not sure I've ever been ready for anything, but I'm going to give it my best shot." Olivia laughed. "That's the spirit." She led him inside, and the moment they stepped through the glass doors, James was hit with the unmistakable scent of luxury, polished wood, fresh flowers, and a faint scent of cologne that probably cost more than his monthly rent. The lobby was decorated with abstract art, and sleek glass tables held vases filled with bright flowers. There were staff members everywhere, moving around quickly, looking professional and efficient. Olivia guided him to the elevator, where they rode up to the 12th floor. When the doors opened, James was greeted by a huge open-plan office, filled with rows of desks, bustling employees, and panoramic windows that looked out over the city. It was the kind of office that made James feel like he had stumbled into a different world. "This is it," Olivia said, leading him toward a large conference room. "This is where the magic happens." They entered the room, and Olivia's father, Mr. Okafor, was already waiting. He was a tall man with a commanding presence, dressed in a sharp suit that made James feel like he was underdressed, despite the fact that he'd done his best to look professional. Mr. Okafor stood as they entered. "James, it's good to finally meet you in person." His voice was warm and inviting, but there was an underlying strength to it that made James stand up a little straighter. "It's a pleasure, sir," James said, shaking his hand firmly. "Thank you for this opportunity. I'm really looking forward to working here." Mr. Okafor smiled, his eyes twinkling. "I've heard good things about you. Olivia speaks highly of you, and I trust her judgment. We've got a lot of potential here, and I believe you could bring something special to the team." James felt a rush of gratitude. "I'll do my best to prove you right, sir." Olivia leaned against the wall, watching the exchange with a proud smile. "See? Told you he was the right fit," she said, her voice light and teasing. Mr. Okafor chuckled. "Let's hope you're right. We're a fast-paced company, James. We expect the best and we give the best in return." They spent the next hour going over the details of the position, the expectations, and the opportunities that lay ahead. James could hardly believe it. The job was everything he could have hoped for. A manager at a major oil company, great pay, amazing benefits, and a real chance to grow. By the end of the meeting, James was exhausted, but in the best possible way. This was real. He had gone from being betrayed by his uncle to being handed the keys to a new life, all in a matter of days. As they walked out of the conference room, Mr. Okafor gave James one final piece of advice. "One thing I always tell my team is this: you can never stop learning. The world doesn't wait for you to catch up. It moves, and you have to keep up. But if you're willing to put in the work, the rewards are endless." James nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. This was his fresh start. This was his chance. As he and Olivia left the building, the weight of the last few months finally started to lift off his shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt hopeful. It wasn't going to be easy and it wasn't going to be perfect, but he was on the right path. "You did great," Olivia said as they walked down the stairs to the parking lot. "I told you, this is just the beginning, James." He smiled, feeling like the words were finally sinking in. Yeah, it feels like it's just getting started. Olivia grinned. Just wait until you see what's next. You haven't seen anything yet. James laughed, the weight of everything that had happened still fresh in his mind. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had a future to look forward to. And maybe, just maybe, this time, things would be different. Better. As they drove off into the bustling streets of Lagos, James looked out the window once more. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was about to thrive. The week after James began his new job at Mr. Okafor's company felt like a dream he had almost forgotten to wake up from. Every morning, he dressed in his crisp suit, took his seat at the office, and walked through the gleaming hallways of a company that saw potential in him. For the first time in years, he was someone important. But as he threw himself into his new role, another reality loomed in the background, one that would soon make its presence known. James was, after all, still tied to the shadow of his past, his uncle, Chief Thomas. The same man who had stolen his inheritance, poisoned his parents, and shattered his trust. James hadn't heard from him since that day in the office when his uncle had thrown his betrayal in his face, but he couldn't forget that last conversation. It wasn't long before word started spreading through Lagos. It was a small city, after all. Chief Thomas's business was failing. The news hit James like a tidal wave, crashing through his newfound calm. Could it be true? The man who had built his wealth off the backs of others was now facing the consequences of his own actions. James was at his desk, going over a few reports when Olivia popped her head through the door of his office, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. I just heard the news. Your uncle's sinking faster than a rock in water. Sounds like karma's got a nice little surprise for him. James put down his pen, leaning back in his chair, trying to suppress the satisfaction that bubbled up inside him. Is it bad that I feel a little bit happy about that? Olivia chuckled, walking into his office. It's not bad at all. Honestly, after everything he did to you, I'd be surprised if you didn't feel that way. What happened? Why is he failing? James ran a hand through his hair, trying to digest the news. I don't know exactly, but from what I hear, people are pulling out of his business. Customers are leaving, sales are down, and there's been talk of bad management decisions. He paused, a slight chuckle escaping him. Sounds like the empire he built on lies is crumbling. Olivia raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. Oh, so you're saying he built his business on sand, huh? James smirked. Not just sand. Poisoned sand. It was about 2 weeks later when James got the call. He was sitting at his desk, working late to prepare some reports for an upcoming meeting, when his phone buzzed. The caller ID was a number he hadn't seen in a while. Chief Thomas. For a second, James thought about not answering it. After all, his uncle had made it clear what kind of person he was, but something inside him compelled him to pick up. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment of reckoning he had been waiting for. Hello? The voice on the other end was raspy, weak. James, it's me, Uncle Thomas. James's heart sank. The man sounded like he had aged a decade in just a few weeks. He could hear the desperation in his voice. What is it now, Uncle? James asked, his tone flat, masking the flood of emotions surging inside him. There was a long pause before Chief Thomas spoke again, this time more slowly, as though the words weighed heavily on him. I'm dying, James. I've got less than a month to live. The doctors say the cancer's spread too far. My time's running out. James felt a strange mixture of pity and indifference. Cancer was a cruel thing, but he knew his uncle's actions had long since erased any semblance of sympathy from his heart. Still, he couldn't help but feel a small pang of sadness at the thought of anyone suffering. I'm sorry to hear that, he said, his voice cool. even as a part of him couldn't quite shake the feeling of satisfaction that had been gnawing at him. Chief Thomas's voice wavered. I know what I've done, James. And I'm sorry. I should have never done what I did to you and your parents. The greed, the poison. It was wrong. I've ruined everything. And now, I have nothing. You took everything from me, Uncle. Everything. My parents, my inheritance, my trust. You can't just apologize and expect that to fix things, James said, his voice unwavering. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. James could almost picture his uncle, sitting there alone, the weight of his actions finally catching up to him. I know, Chief Thomas finally whispered. I don't expect forgiveness, but I've made arrangements. I've written everything down. I'm giving you what's yours. The businesses, the estates, the money. It's all in the documents. They're yours. It's too late for me to make things right, but at least I can leave you with something. James's heart skipped a beat. What are you saying? You've already taken everything. What more could you possibly give me? Chief Thomas's voice grew weaker. I've left the papers in my safe. The codes, they're on a piece of paper in my desk. If you want it, James, you have to come to me. I'm giving you back what's yours. Everything. That should have been yours. When I die, James's mind raced. The weight of his uncle's confession hung in the air, but something inside him stopped him from feeling any triumph. The idea of reclaiming everything that had been stolen from him felt right, yet strangely unimportant in this moment. I'll come, he said, his voice firm. I'll take what's mine. But don't think that's going to fix everything. You can't undo what you've done. James hung up the phone. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the skyline of Lagos once more. The city had always been full of promise, but the past few years had shown him the other side of that coin. The darkness that came with ambition, greed, and betrayal. This is just the beginning, James whispered to himself. It's time to take back what's mine. But as he made plans to head to Chief Thomas's office, a strange feeling of emptiness lingered. The wealth, the power, it all felt insignificant compared to the years of pain he had endured. Would taking back what had been stolen from him really be enough? The answers were unclear. But one thing was for certain. James was done playing someone else's game. He was about to build something of his own, on his own terms, and no one would stand in his way again. The streets of Lagos were alive with the usual chaos, but James felt a strange sense of calm as he walked toward Chief Thomas's office. For the first time in what felt like forever, he was in control. The weight of the past was still heavy on his shoulders, but now it was a weight he could carry. He wasn't trying to run from it anymore. He was walking straight into it. The building loomed ahead, the glass doors reflecting the hustle and bustle of the city around it. James couldn't help but feel a knot of unease tighten in his stomach. He hadn't been back here since his uncle had tossed him out, accusing him of stealing the money James had never touched. That betrayal still felt fresh, even after all these years. But today was different. As he walked through the doors, he didn't feel like the boy who had lost everything. Today, he was the man who was about to take everything back. He made his way up to the office. The elevator ride up to the top floor was silent, and James couldn't help but notice the small bead of sweat on his brow. He was almost there, almost at the point where everything would change, where he would be handed back what was rightfully his. When the elevator doors opened, James stepped into the familiar lobby, its marble floors shining under the bright lights. Everything about this place was designed to intimidate, to remind anyone who walked through the door just how important it was. And yet standing there now, it didn't feel important anymore. It felt like a place that had been built on lies. He walked toward Chief Thomas's office, where the door was slightly ajar. He could hear his uncle's voice on the phone, his words muffled but urgent. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. The deal's off. If you want it, you'll have to come up with something new." James pushed the door open just enough to see his uncle seated at his desk, a look of deep frustration on his face. When he saw James, Chief Thomas immediately ended the call, a forced smile crossing his face. "Ah, James, you've come. I wasn't sure you'd show up after everything that's happened." His voice was weak, almost pleading. But there was an unmistakable hint of arrogance still lurking beneath the surface. James said nothing at first. He just stood there, his eyes fixed on his uncle. The man who had poisoned his parents. The man who had stolen his birthright. The man who had destroyed his trust. After what felt like an eternity, James finally spoke. "You called me here. What's this about? More empty promises?" Chief Thomas shifted uncomfortably behind his desk, his hands twisting a pen. "Look, James, I know I've done things that can't be undone. But you need to understand I didn't have a choice. It wasn't just about the money. It was about power. About survival." James's eyes narrowed. "Power? Survival? You poisoned my parents for power?" His uncle didn't respond right away. He just sat there looking at James with a mixture of guilt and resentment. Finally, he sighed, as though the weight of the years had crushed him to the point of surrender. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Chief Thomas said quietly. "I never imagined it would end like this. But I'm dying, James. And I've left you something. Something you should have had all along." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. James took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. "What are you talking about?" "The inheritance," Chief Thomas said, his voice shaking. "The businesses, the estates, the money your parents left behind. It's all there. Everything you were supposed to have." James couldn't believe what he was hearing. This was it. This was what he had fought for. What he had sacrificed his peace of mind and his dignity for. But even as the thought of reclaiming what was his filled him with a sense of triumph, he couldn't shake the emptiness that had settled inside him. What was the point of it all? "Where is it?" James asked, his voice steady. "Where's the paperwork? The documents?" Chief Thomas didn't meet his eyes. He motioned toward the large wooden safe behind him. "The combination is 2781. The papers are inside." James moved toward the safe, his mind racing. This was it. His heart beat faster with each step, but when he finally opened the safe and looked inside, he was met with nothing but a pile of old documents, most of them irrelevant. Except for one envelope. He pulled it out carefully, almost afraid to touch it. It was thick, official-looking, with a seal on the front, his parents' seal. He tore it open quickly, his hands shaking. Inside was a series of papers, deeds to properties, contracts, bank statements, and a letter. The letter was handwritten, and as James read it, his heart pounded harder in his chest. It was from his parents. "To our beloved son James, if you are reading this, then we are no longer with you. But we leave you everything we built. May this inheritance guide you to a life of wisdom, humility, and strength. Remember always that family is more than just blood. Never forget who you are and where you come from. Love, father, and mother." The words felt like a weight that landed heavily on his chest. Tears burned at the back of his eyes, but he held them back. He wasn't going to cry. Not now. Not in front of this man. He folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket, then looked at his uncle. "It's over," James said quietly, his voice a mixture of exhaustion and finality. "You've lost. You're right. You don't get to make it right. But I'm taking what's mine, and I'm walking out of here." Chief Thomas opened his mouth, but no words came out. His face was pale, his eyes wide as he watched James take the documents and leave the room without another word. As James walked out of the office, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of closure. The inheritance was his. He had reclaimed it all. His parents' legacy, their wealth, their businesses. But it didn't feel like the victory he had imagined. It felt like a burden. As he stepped out into the sunlight, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let the past define him. He was going to build his future on his own terms, and nothing, not even his uncle, would stand in his way again. The end. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe.